to identify specific proposals for those priorities listed in the declaration commemorating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. That's where we can truly make a difference. To this end, we have co-led with Sweden, whose Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, my dear friend, has decided to co-sponsor this initiative together with Spain. Please allow me to take this opportunity to thank him for all his support from the bottom of my heart and for his virtual attendance at this event. A diverse group of world leaders have also lent their voices to this call to action because they share this same commitment to a future in which multilateralism plays a vital role, to a commitment we all make today here in El Pardo Palace. I'd like to express my gratitude to the President of Costa Rica, Carlos Alvarado, for joining this initiative and for his attendance at this event, in spite of the time difference. It is an honor to announce that this call to action has also been endorsed by the heads of state and of government of Canada, South Korea, Bangladesh, Jordan, Senegal, South Africa, Tunisia, and that we have the support of the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. And I'd like to thank all of the ambassadors who are with us here today as we all, together with Spain, are leading this initiative. All the leaders taking part in this celebration have undertaken to continue reinforcing multilateralism in their respective regions and spheres of influence. Spain has a vision of our role in the world that is global. We believe in a world based on effective multilateralism to face global challenges that cannot be faced in isolation, challenges that can only be tackled by open societies with constant social progress, open societies that demand that we advance towards greater rights and freedoms and towards transparency, accountability, and democratic regeneration, participation on the part of our citizens, open societies committed to democratic values beyond our borders. I'll finish my words this morning with one of my favorite quotes. It's a quote from one of Spain's most important philosophers, Ortega y Gasset, who said, "We can only move forward when we look to the far horizon." Thinking big is the only path to progress. So let's look far and let's think big. That's our message to all the citizens of the world, and it is in this same spirit that inspired the foundation of the United Nations 75 years ago. This commemoration must serve, Your Majesty, leaders, authorities, ladies and gentlemen, to prompt us to step up our ambition, to continue working together for a future that leaves no one behind. It is this spirit, as I said, that inspired the foundation of the United Nations, and it is the spirit of this commemoration, thinking big, looking far, very far, working together, united, for a future that leaves no one behind. As I said, thinking big, looking far, very far. So this policy initiative to make the UN General Assembly's proposal a reality is co-sponsored, as I said, by Sweden, and the Prime Minister of Sweden, Stefan Löfven, is joining us from Stockholm. He's joining us live. Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. The floor is yours.
You have the floor, Mr. Prime Minister. Good morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Your Majesty, Excellencies, it is a great honor and privilege to be amongst this group of leaders. It really gives me hope. And I do want to commend and thank Prime Minister Sanchez and his team for initiating this work and bringing our countries closer to this joint call for reinforcing multilateralism. Now, we all represent countries which believe in multilateral and international cooperation. We all represent countries that believe that global concerns requires global cooperation. As we this year celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, I want to recognize the success of international cooperation over the past decades. The list of major achievements is long. However, the United Nations and international cooperation also face unprecedented challenges. In times like these, we need to step up and show that we believe in multilateral cooperation in a strong United Nations. The UN 75 Declaration, together with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, provides the world with an agenda and a vision for the 21st century. Our focus must now be on how to turn these commitments into concrete actions and tangible results for people across the globe. Defending and standing up for the core principles of common security, international cooperation, multilateralism, and the United Nations is key. Now, the cross-regional composition of our network is unique, bringing together countries across the globe with the shared conviction that international cooperation is the only way forward. Addressing the pandemic and ensuring a sustainable economic recovery is important, and it's today the most pressing priority of any leader. We must step up efforts to combat climate change and build more resilient, inclusive, healthy, and greener society. We must address increasing inequalities, which are now tearing our societies apart, hampering development, and also destabilizing communities, leaving them more vulnerable to the future crisis. Now, these are the fundamentals of building back better and greener. Only by working together across borders can we succeed and come back stronger. Lastly, I'm very happy that we together now have adopted this call for action addressing these issues, and I do look forward to continuing cooperate with you on these very, very important issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Prime Minister. So let's go to another continent. We're going to go to Costa Rica. His President, Carlos Alvarado, will be speaking to us live, even though it is 6:20 in the morning. So good morning, and sorry to make you get up so early, Mr. President. We are listening to you now. Good morning from San Jose de Costa Rica, Your Majesty, Mr. President of the government, Prime Minister of Sweden, other authorities from the government. From Costa Rica, I enthusiastically join you in this call to action, which was expressed in the call to action that is coming out of this event to develop the commemorations of the 75th anniversary of the UN, and which we adopted just a few weeks ago. Today, more than ever, we are convinced that the challenges that we face as global societies are interconnected, and these are part of a collective action to achieve effective solutions. And in this work, a priority is to build sustainable development based on regional and international cooperation within the framework of a solidary multilateralism, an effective multilateralism, the awareness of the social disparities that we face today and their consequences, and the fact that we must be so attentive to the destruction of our environment that leads to human-induced climate change. All of this is part of decent development of a better future that leaves no one behind. Costa Rica believes in these goals, and we highlight the relevance of three major commitments that effective multilateralism has to meet. And the first of these commitments is peacekeeping and international security. International peace and security are not based on strength, on some absurd arms race. No, peace and security are obtained through alleviating poverty, through closing gaps, creating opportunity, and providing remedies for injustice. Human safety is a key element of security, and peace and international security also demand that we defend the integrity and independence of the International Criminal Court. By the same token that there can't be peace without security, there can't be peace without justice. The second of our commitments is to women and girls around the world in all their diversity. It is the time to recognize their transformative role, putting women and girls at the center of our public policy. It is the time to guarantee their effective equality, full participation, significant participation in building peaceful, just, inclusive, sustainable, green, decarbonized societies. The third of these commitments is to finance development and international cooperation. 50 years ago, the developed countries agreed to promote a minimum of 0.7. 15 years ago, they agreed to promote 0.7% of their GDP to development, but only 6 countries have met this goal. And we have tried to mobilize 100 million a year to promote climate action around the world in developing countries, but this is still a challenge that we have yet to meet. When we look at a global vision, at the urgency in our societies to mitigate the most catastrophic effects of climate change and the loss of biodiversity, this pandemic is forcing us to have extraordinary levels of resources available to meet the needs of millions of people. There is no time to lose. Today, more than ever, we must reinforce multilateralism as well as international cooperation. Outside of foreign policy circles, multilateralism is a very common word. But for our own peoples, it could be a strange word, a policy they don't understand. What does it mean? It means working together. It means recognizing, acknowledging diversity. It means inclusion. It means cooperation. It means justice. It means the brotherhood and sisterhood amongst peoples. And in this act today, in this commemoration, we are defending and committing and reaffirming that commitment. A warm welcome to all of you from San Jose de Costa Rica. Goodbye. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and have a nice day. So now we're not just going to change continents. We're going to change hemispheres. We are going to have the message of the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Antonio Guterres, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. South Africa is really honored to participate in this high-level event in support of multilateralism. As the countries of the world, we have committed to the principles contained in the political declaration on the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. As we seek practical ways to build back better from the COVID-19 pandemic, we are keenly aware that it is only through multilateralism that we can solve our challenges. The next global emergency should find us better prepared with stronger social protection, health systems, and services for our people. Meeting the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals will be the truest measure of our success. South Africa will continue to work with members of this initiative to improve global health systems, to reduce inequality, and to protect our planet. We will collaborate on building peace and security. We will defend human rights. We will advance gender equality and harness the digital revolution. The United Nations is the foundation of our multilateral system of governance. No other global organization gives hope for a better world to so many people. The UN must be fit for purpose, adequately funded and representative in its decision-making structures. It is in our collective interest that the UN is strengthened as we work together to advance the global agenda for people, planet, and prosperity. I thank you.
So now we're going to Asia. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Hasina Wased.
His Excellency Pedro Sanchez, Honorable Prime Minister of Spain, His Excellency Stefan Löfven, Honorable Prime Minister of Sweden, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank the government of Spain for organizing this high-level event in support of multilateralism, which is at the core of face today's unique challenges caused by COVID-19. The significance of multilateral cooperation is now more evident than ever due to the current global pandemic. Dear friends, we have adopted the political declaration on 21st September to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the UN. In the declaration, we laid emphasis on shared responsibility and collective efforts for our unified prosperity and to advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. However, to achieve the benefits out of these international instruments and understanding, strong multilateralism is required. The spirit of multilateralism and international cooperation is enshrined in the Constitution of Bangladesh, which says, I quote, "We may prosper in freedom and may make our full contribution towards international peace and cooperation in keeping with the progressive aspirations of mankind," unquote. Our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, also highlighted the importance of collective efforts and the role of the UN in his statement at the UNGA in 1974. He said, I quote, "The United Nations remains as the center of hope for the future of the people in this world of sadness, misery, and conflicts," unquote. His comment still remains to be the bedrock of our multilateral engagements. Excellencies, Bangladesh is a flag bearer of multilateralism and strongly pursues international peace and security by its high presence in the UN peacekeeping and peace-building progress. We have adopted the whole of the society approach in realizing the SDGs. We are equally committed to implementing the Paris Agreement. As such, Bangladesh has been honored to be chosen to lead the 48-member Climate Vulnerable Forum for the second time. We have also qualified to be graduated from LDC status, in which the UN system played a crucial role. It reflects our commitment and trust in multilateralism.
Dear friends, COVID-19 pandemic has taught us that the global prosperity is embedded in collective actions, unity, and international cooperation. History proves that any deviation from this united approach will only bring disastrous effects for the humankind. To face crises caused by the pandemic, we have so far allotted $14.14 billion US, which is 4.3% of our GDP, to protect the livelihood of our people. Despite the pandemic, our GDP registered a 5.24% growth due to our timely interventions. However, unless a multilateral effort is undertaken at the global level, global recovery will not commence and will never be sustainable. The recent trend of protectionism and xenophobia in some countries may bring further sufferings for the innocent people and adversely impact the peaceful multilateral environment. So, all of us should guard against this type of activities which are detrimental to international peace, security, and global development. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's globalized world, constructive multilateralism is not an option. It is the only way out for a rules-based international order and common progress of humankind. The COVID-19 pandemic is a stark reminder that no one is safe until everyone is safe. In order to reduce inequality, eradicate poverty, and protect our planet, we need to work together and reinforce our multilateral efforts. Thank you all again.
In this trip around the world, we're going to make a stop in Canada. Its Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is here to greet us.
Today, I join leaders from around the world to reinforce multilateralism and reaffirm Canada's commitment to it. I want to thank Prime Minister Sanchez for leading this initiative and for bringing everyone together today. Now, more than ever, we need to lean on one another. COVID-19 has impacted all of our countries and all of our people. We now face the greatest health and economic crisis of our generation, and it will take all of us to rebuild a stronger and more resilient world. Un monde en meilleure santé, plus vert et plus juste pour tous, où l'on agit avec force contre les changements climatiques, où l'on fait valoir l'égalité des sexes et les droits de la personne. Un monde durable pour le bien des prochaines générations. Together, by reinforcing multilateralism, we can tackle the greatest challenges of our time and build back better for our countries and our people. Merci.
So now let's go to the other side of the world. We're going to go to Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
The world gathered in San Francisco 75 years ago in the wake of a devastating war and founded the United Nations. New Zealand was there and was one of 51 countries to sign the United Nations Charter on 26 June 1945. Now at the 75th anniversary of the UN, New Zealand remains a committed member. New Zealand shares the UN's vision of the future we all want and the United Nations we all need. New Zealand's place in the world and our history as a country drives us to seek common purpose, find strength in diversity, strive for a more equal society and strong institutions that promote fairness and deliver for all people. We collectively must step up with political will and find global solutions to the urgent challenges of our era. We must tackle the COVID-19 pandemic together with determination, good science and policy, and develop and distribute a vaccine on an equitable basis. We must build back better towards a global economic recovery that protects the most vulnerable, creates decent jobs, rejects trade protectionism and maintains well-functioning supply chains and open markets. A revitalised multilateral trading system with a full functioning WTO is its core is essential. We must fulfil the commitments of the Paris Agreement and invest in the restoration of biodiversity globally. We must reform environmentally harmful subsidies and redirect these billions of dollars of public funds into transitioning to a lower emissions, sustainable future. And we must accelerate action to achieve gender equality and ensure the empowerment of all women and girls. We must support the International Criminal Court to fulfill its mandate to end impunity for grave crimes that threaten the peace, security and well-being of the world. And because we cannot prepare for the unimaginable suffering in the wake of a nuclear holocaust, we must prevent one. The entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in a matter of weeks is a necessary step towards their total elimination. Let's keep working together. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
So now we're going to Jordan. It's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Oyman Safadi.
Honor to convey to you the greetings of His Majesty King Abdullah II and his wishes for a successful meeting. On behalf of His Majesty, I thank our partners, Spain and Sweden, for this important initiative. Reinforcing multilateralism is reinforcing our collective abilities to tackle common challenges. It's reinforcing our abilities to protect the environment, to achieve sustainable development, and to end conflicts, injustices, and to bring about peace and stability. Working together on the basis of international law is key to creating opportunity and to building a more prosperous future for all of us in our increasingly interconnected world. And right now, as we face the COVID-19 pandemic, it is more clear than ever that we need each other, that we must work together to protect our peoples. In the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, our commitment to multilateralism is unwavering. In the words of His Majesty King Abdullah II, collective action is vital when it comes to resolving conflicts and crises that threaten our world. We do need multilateral partnerships as we pursue solutions to challenges of refugees, conflicts, food security, as we work on delivering a just, lasting peace that fulfills the right of the Palestinian people to freedom and sovereign state that lives in peace side by side Israel on the basis of the two-state solution and in accordance with international law. Your Excellencies, reinforcing multilateralism is a must. The better future that we all seek will be more attainable if we join forces, if we consolidate multilateral structures that have done a lot of good over many decades and despite many difficult challenges. Thank you.
From the Middle East, we go to the African Atlantic coast with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Senegal, Aïssata Tall Sall.
Président du gouvernement espagnol, Mesdames, Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement et chefs de délégation, Monsieur le secrétaire général des Nations Unies, au nom de son Excellence, Monsieur le Président Macky Sall, j'adresse nos chaleureuses félicitations au gouvernement espagnol pour cette généreuse initiative qui nous offre l'opportunité de réaffirmer notre attachement au multilatéralisme. Alors que nous venons de fêter le 75e anniversaire de l'Organisation des Nations Unies, cette rencontre nous donne l'occasion de renouveler notre engagement collectif en faveur d'un multilatéralisme revigoré et inclusif, incarné par essence par un système des Nations Unies réformé et plus efficace. Dans l'immédiat, un premier test d'inclusion et d'efficacité multilatérale est devant nous avec la sévère pandémie de Covid-19. Nous réussirons ce test si nous faisons en sorte que le futur vaccin anti-Covid-19 soit un bien public mondial accessible à tous et à un coût abordable. Ensuite, œuvrons ensemble pour que la reconstruction post-Covid de nos économies soit inclusive, solidaire et soucieuse de l'urgence climatique. À plus long terme, la décennie d'action pour le développement durable lancée en septembre dernier nous met au défi d'accélérer le financement de l'agenda du développement durable, notamment à travers la mise en œuvre du plan d'action d'Addis Abeba. C'est dans le même esprit que s'inscrit l'appel du président Macky Sall en faveur de l'allègement de la dette des pays en développement, africains en particulier, en soutien à leurs efforts de résilience et de relance économique et sociale. Enfin, dans ce contexte inédit d'incertitude, il y a du sens à retourner aux idéaux et principes fondateurs de la Charte de l'ONU, à savoir la paix et la sécurité, le développement durable, la promotion et la protection des droits de l'homme. Nous avons besoin de l'engagement renouvelé des Nations Unies pour relever les défis globaux qui hantent la quiétude de nos peuples, le terrorisme et l'extrémisme violent, notamment au Sahel, les conflits internes et interétatiques, les flux financiers illicites, la migration illégale, la pauvreté extrême et l'exclusion sociale. Sur tous ces enjeux majeurs, le Sénégal reste engagé pour un multilatéralisme fort, apaisé et efficace, tel que reflété dans la déclaration que nous venons d'adopter. Je vous remercie.
Now we're going to the Mediterranean coast. We have the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tunis, Osman Gerandi.
الرئيس قيس سعيد الذي كلفني بأن أتلو نيابة عن سيادته كلمة تونس أمام هذا الجمع الكريم. أقتبس: أصحاب الجلالة والفخامة، يسعدني أن أشارك اليوم في اجتماعنا هذا من أجل إطلاق نداء للمجموعة الدولية لتعزيز العمل متعدد الأطراف، وأود أن أقدم تحية خاصة إلى حكومتي إسبانيا والسويد اللتين تقدمتا بهذه المبادرة الهادفة إلى تأكيد تمسكنا بما جاء به الإعلان الذي تم اعتماده بالإجماع يوم 21 سبتمبر 2020 بمناسبة الاحتفال بالذكرى 75 لإنشاء منظمة الأمم المتحدة. ولقد انخرطت تونس في هذه المبادرة إيمانا منها بأهمية تفعيل هذا الإعلان العالمي الجامع الذي اعتمدته كل دول العالم، وهي تواجه تعقيدات الوضع الدولي بسبب انتشار جائحة كوفيد-19. دعت تونس منذ بداية انتشار الوباء إلى ضرورة اعتماد مقاربة جديدة في التعاطي الدولي مع تأثيرات الجائحة، وتوج هذا التحرك باعتماد مجلس الأمن بالإجماع يوم 1 جويلية 2020 للقرار 2532 الذي تقدمت به تونس وفرنسا، والذي يدعو إلى وقف فوري وشامل لإطلاق النار والالتزام بهدنة إنسانية في مختلف النزاعات في العالم. ويأتي هذا البيان الذي سنعتمده اليوم لتأكيد هذا التوجه الضروري نحو تجديد ثقتنا في قيم العمل متعدد الأطراف التي تجسدها منظمة الأمم المتحدة والسلام. وانتهى الاقتباس.
Now we go to the Far East. We are with Mr. Cho Tae-hom-lee, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea.
For hosting this high-level event in support of multilateralism. Over half a year into the pandemic, the need for international community to shore up multilateralism is clearer than ever. Korea, since the very outset of this pandemic, has been calling for multilateral response. In May, Korea spearheaded the launch of friends groups in New York, Geneva, and Paris, aiming to mainstream pandemic-related challenges into the work of UN entities. We have also strived to shield global supply chains from further disruption, while working to facilitate the essential cross-border movement of people, to the extent possible within the boundary of each country's disease control efforts. With the end of the pandemic nowhere in sight, it is time to act now to build back better for our future. For each part, Korea has just launched a strategy called Korean New Deal, which charts a new path towards a low-carbon, digitalized, and more inclusive economy in the post-COVID era. President Moon Jae-in announced that Korea aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and Korea will host the second P4G summit late May next year to strengthen global partnership in pursuing green growth, climate action, and SDGs. Korea stands ready to work closely with you and other like-minded countries to step forward toward strengthened multilateralism. Let us join forces to ensure that multilateralism guides our path out of this pandemic and beyond. Thank you.
So we're ending this trip around the world, and we'd like to express our gratitude for their presence, for their very significant presence to everyone, whether they're by a screen or here with us in this beautiful patio. And what better way to show our gratitude than with a musical gift, a little moment of music, a symbol of how the United Nations is universal and music is the universal language. This is a piece by the Maestro Arriaga, considered the Mozart of Spain. He died at a very young age. And these four young women will be playing it for us. They're the women's string quartet of the Queen Sofia Musical Conservatory. Talent, of course, has no age. It has no gender. And they're going to offer us the first movement of the string quartet in D minor by Juan Crisóstomo Arriaga.
We stand today freedom and justice. I have a dream.
Say thank you.
It's one small step for man.
The Berlin Wall.
From the European grace.
Being here with such honorable people.
In one unshakable unity of determination to find a way to end wars.
Ahora más que nunca, necesitamos ahondar en el multilateralismo. La cooperación global es vital. Cada vez que somos incapaces de encontrar soluciones para los desafíos globales, quienes sufren las consecuencias son los más vulnerables en nuestras sociedades. Cada vez que les fallamos, herimos sus vidas y destruimos su futuro, que es el nuestro. La COVID-19 exige afrontarla con unidad. Economía, sanidad pública, educación universal, con igualdad.
Y que haya una igualdad de verdad.
Y justicia.
Justice.
Mayor protección de los derechos humanos. Detener el cambio climático y la destrucción del medio ambiente es la prioridad. Para ser optimistas en el futuro del mundo, tenemos que fijarnos en nuestros jóvenes. Los jóvenes nos miran, la juventud nos grita. No podemos fallarles por más tiempo. No podemos bajar la guardia. Ser conformistas, porque aún queda tanto por hacer. ¿En qué momento decidimos que la expresión cambiar el mundo había dejado de tener sentido? No tenemos límites cuando el mundo afronta unido los desafíos.
It's inspiring expression of this organization that has such a singular importance of values for all of humanity. And now it's Secretary General, the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres.
Dear friends, distinguished guests, first of all, I want to thank you all. Thank you for taking the lead, for forgetting about more pressing initiatives and start looking towards the future. I think your efforts, this coalition, will have very beneficial effects for...
Away from the immediate pressures to fix your eyes on the future. I believe that your effort and the coalition you are building will have generational consequences for good. The 75th anniversary of the United Nations is a moment for celebration, and I commend all of you for marking this milestone in your countries. But even more, it is a moment for deep reflection, for critical thinking, for constructive dialogue, for meaningful engagement and for real change. After all, we cannot simply return to the systems that gave rise to the current crisis. We need to emerge better with more sustainable, inclusive, gender-equal societies and economies. In doing so, we must reimagine the way nations cooperate. As I said in my address to the opening of the General Assembly, we face a 1945 moment. The central question is, how do we reinforce or even build structures for the challenges of our age? The COVID-19 pandemic has upended our world. The ground shifted under our feet. The fragilities and fault lines have been exposed like never before. How do we make the structures of multilateralism earthquake-proof? How do we ensure that we are better prepared for any and all future crises? How do we construct robust mechanisms of global governance through international cooperation? We have a first blueprint, the UN 75 Declaration. Now is the time to think together about how to make multilateralism more inclusive and more networked and more effective. Your alliance has already made a significant difference in efforts to recognize that the COVID-19 vaccine must be a global public good available to everyone, everywhere, as soon as possible. But just as we need a people's vaccine, we also need the medicine that will help societies as a whole to recover better from COVID. There is plenty of analysis on what the challenges are, but not many answers on how we build the mechanisms of governance to make it happen, both at the societal level, through a new social contract, and at the multilateral level, through what I call a new global deal. Recovery from COVID requires deeper thinking of what future global governance looks like, keeping in mind future generations. And it means delivering on the commitments to the 2030 Agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Agreement on climate change. As you engage in this important endeavor, I have three asks. First, we need your continued strong support on the people's vaccine as we strive to emerge from the pandemic. Second, the COVID crisis is a dress rehearsal for the challenges to come, starting with the climate crisis. We need your crucial leadership to reposition climate action as the top item on the global agenda. Concretely, that means taking the necessary actions now to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, reinforce the resilience of our societies and economies, and ensure that financial support is provided. Many of your countries are already on board. I look forward to each of your countries making the necessary commitments to be a part of the Climate Ambition Summit I will co-host with France and the United Kingdom on the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Third, I encourage you to brainstorm action-oriented ideas about the future of multilateralism. I've been calling for a networked multilateralism, with the United Nations working more closely with the Bretton Woods system and the full spectrum of multilateral institutions, regional organizations, and others. I'm also advocating for an inclusive multilateralism in which we can draw on the remarkable capacities of civil society, the business community, local authorities, cities and regional governments. If we can strengthen international cooperation in these directions, we can move closer to having global governance where it is needed. I welcome your own timely call to action, and I look forward to your continued engagement to advance our common agenda. You are raising the bar of ambition and blazing the trail to a more sustainable, fair, just, peaceful and inclusive future for all. I am with you. You can count on me every step of the way, and I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much to the Secretary General for his leadership, for his personal commitment to such an important anniversary and to this important event where we are celebrating the past, but above all, looking forward to our commitments to the future. To conclude, I give the floor to His Majesty the King. Good afternoon. I'm going to greet from afar the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Sweden, the President of Costa Rica, thanking them for being here with us live. I'd also like to thank everyone for their contributions. So many leaders, prime ministers, ministers from around the world who have been with us through their taped interventions, and of course to the Secretary General of the United Nations. We welcome him, we greet him from the bottom of our hearts, and we thank him for his leadership in these difficult times. President of the Government of Spain, Speaker of Congress, President of the Senate, President of the Constitutional Tribunal, President of the General Council of the Judiciary, of the Supreme Court, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization, ambassadors and other representatives of the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to see you all today at the Pardo Palace. And for me, it is an honor to be closing this act, this initiative of the government of Spain commemorating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, an event of commemoration, of a tribute, but also, and above all, looking towards the future with hope, with commitment. On the 21st of September, I also had the honor of participating, along with 164 other heads of state and of government, in the solemn act organized by the United Nations to commemorate the 75th anniversary of its creation. This event had to be held via video conference due to the pandemic that still affects us today so severely around the world. But the very fact that it was being held, like the fact that today we are commemorating here in Spain that anniversary, that is proof of our decided commitment through a multilateral effort, united, to tackle this pandemic with cooperation among nations, institutions, and individuals. As I said then, my first feeling that comes to mind when I think of the UN is gratitude. Gratitude towards those who founded it, towards those who continue to work there, to truly achieve day after day the goals and principles that the United Nations embodies. Whether it's because of the logical desire for its constant improvement, whether through excessive demand for results. We're not always aware of the UN's many, many achievements over the course of these 75 years. Success stories without which our world would not be what it is today. We've seen, really alluded to many of these achievements. These are success stories that are fundamental pillars of how we understand reality. And we often take them for granted without stopping to think that all of this is possible thanks above all to the United Nations. Indeed, under its banner, an impressive series of achievements has been consolidated and codified, and allow me to give some details on a few of them, just a few. The UN is an institution that created this singular instrument for international security, which are peacekeeping operations, what we call the Blue Helmets, who were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. That same Nobel Peace Prize has also been given to the UN, 2 of its Secretary Generals, and several of its specialized agencies, funds, and programs. This very year, just a few days ago, the World Food Program was given that prize for its admirable work day after day to provide food and assistance to more than 100 million children, women, and men who suffer hunger around the world. It is the United Nations that has mediated and continues to mediate to resolve many conflicts and has avoided that others broke out. The principles of the UN Charter have enabled and facilitated the decolonization of many colonial territories after the Second World War. Were it not for the United Nations, human rights would not have become a legally enforceable part of international law. They are foundations of how we see the world, like the right to life, to physical integrity, the right to not be tortured, the right to freedom of expression and of opinion. Today, these are internationally recognized rights thanks to the adoption in 1966 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. By the same token, women's rights have only been an international right since the adoption in 1979 of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. On the rights of children, since 10 years later, the Convention on the Rights of the Child was adopted at the UN. It is the United Nations where concepts that we consider so important as sustainable growth or the duty to protect, where these concepts have been coined, or where they've established an international criminal court so that atrocious crimes can be brought to justice when states are unable to do so. We must also be aware of the role of the organizations of the UN system, the eradication of diseases that devastated humanity in the past, such as smallpox, in the protection of different species of animals, and in the codification of the law of the sea. The United Nations, in a word, is an international organization which has created universal consensus to lay out a roadmap for a better world. The Millennial Development Goals in 2000, and above all, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that was approved in 2015. As it's been said again and again today, there's still so much left to do. Enormous challenges lay ahead of us. And the United Nations continues to be as indispensable today as it has been for every single one of these landmarks along the way in its history. The Secretary General pointed out just a few days ago the existing threats, and he warned that it only makes sense, it is only possible to have success if we do it together. Together. All of us, undoubtedly, with the instruments and in the exceptional framework that the United Nations continues to provide for us. The declaration adopted for all of the heads of state and of government on 21 September of this year points towards the future that we want for our peoples. And all of this, we will achieve it by working in a coordinated manner with nations like those who are here today in Madrid, whether virtually or live, representing every continent in the world to reaffirm our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals and to the 2030 Agenda. Our commitment to the promotion of human rights and gender equality, to peace building, to protecting the environment. And of course, our commitment to the adoption of this call to action for reinforcing multilateralism, which has brought us together today in El Pardo Palace. Thank you so much to all of you.
El acto ha concluido.
That is the end of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you for assistance and connecting with us. Muchas gracias por estar por aquí y conectarse con nosotros. Que tengan buen día. Have a nice day.